Hi everyone, my name's Lewis. I've been attending this group for many years now. I know quite a few of you here. I'm an Azure data platform consultant, 15 years of experience, predominantly on the Microsoft platform. I am working as a consultant in various organizations, Microsoft, Diageo, Relics, and I'm currently at the consultancy house Coeo. My LinkedIn is here if you want to connect with me. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about translytical task flows in Fabric. So these are a set of features that together allow you to change data from within a Power BI report. So you've got your report, you've got your graphs, but then there's some functionality that allows you to write data back into a database. I'm going to talk to a real world scenario that I implemented for one of my clients, and then I'm going to actually do it live in front of you. So hopefully it all goes well. So yeah, the case study I'm going to talk about was a client who wanted to measure their carbon emissions. So they had some invoices that went through some OCR software. It was ingested, ended up in a lakehouse, and we're doing some reporting on invoices. All cool. And that was all working well. And the invoices look a bit like this. So we've got an invoice date, supplier, what fuel was being consumed. So gas, kilowatt hours, electricity, and the number of kilowatt hours. And then we also have the cost that was attached to that. And what the client wanted to do was understand like the CO2 impacts of that. And we know how many gas kilowatt hours we have consumed off the invoice. So that's kind of a known thing. We can say like, okay, there's 10 grams of CO2 per unit on the amount. So what we really want to end up with is a table that looks a bit like this, where we have 183 grams of CO2 for gas, 124 for electricity. And then from that in Power BI, we can derive the kilograms of CO2. And that'll be some nice carbon reporting for the organization. In Power BI, you wouldn't really want to structure it like this. So maybe you'd separate it out and you'd have a different table, and that would show you your fuel, and that'll be keyed by the fuel. And then you would just have your grams of CO2. And then you can just create the relationship in Power BI, do the maths, all good. Now, the problem is we don't know the grams of CO2. They're not on the invoice. We've got lots of different fuel types. And we as kind of the data team don't know them either. We have to go get business colleagues to go and figure that out and provide them to us. Now, there are many ways you can get data into Fabric, and you might think, well, just stick something into SharePoint and then load that in. But that require pipelines running, ingestion, and all that stuff. It's not live. And if you want to import data live into Power BI, there has been an approach quite a while, which was Power Apps, which would look something like this. So you would have a Power App that had some kind of interface that'll allow you to enter the fuel and the CO2 units, and then you have somewhere to store that. Maybe a Azure database, maybe Dataverse, or wherever you want to store it. And you would embed that Power App straight into the report. And then people can go on your Power BI report, interact with the Power App, save the data. And if you do all that right, it should work. It's all fine. Now, Power Apps are quite complex for me anyway in terms of licensing. If you plug in a Azure SQL database like I've done on the diagram, that is a premium connector. So then everyone who uses it has to have a more expensive license. It gets complicated and it's been a pain. I only did that once or twice and it never really ended up being used too much. It was a bit of a faff. So what Translytical task flows do is they bring in a few different Fabric components that keep everything in the Fabric ecosystem. So we have a few different bits here. And it's these two bits at the bottom, user data functions, and in this case, a SQL database. So the way it can work is the report can call your user data function, interact with your SQL database, and then if you have it in direct query mode, that can be live in your semantic model, and the changes can show through immediately. So I'm going to go and do that right now in Fabric, and let's see how that goes. So you don't need to see my WhatsApp. Cool. So I have a Fabric workspace with some bits in here already, I already have a version of this finished in case it all goes badly wrong. But hopefully I won't need that. But I do have my SQL database already. And in my SQL database, I've got two tables. I've got my energy usage. These are the invoices. We have various suppliers, various fuel types, the amount of fuel that was consumed and the cost. And I've also set up ready my table where I want to put these emission factors in. It's currently empty. We just have fuel and kilograms of CO2. So, okay, great. First thing I'm going to do is look at the user data functions and create one of those. So over in Power BI, we can go and we can do new item, go away, search for functions, and I'm going to do enter carbon. So this spins up a new function set in your Fabric capacity, and you're presented with a screen like this, and we can just do new function, and we'll be presented with some code. And the way you create these functions is through Python, and these look and feel a lot like Python Azure functions. They probably are behind the scenes somewhere, but this is kind of what you get as an example entry point. First thing you're going to want to do is set up the connection to your SQL database. So on the Manage Connection section, we can just add a new one, and there it is. So connect. All your connections, when you add them into your functions, get an alias. This is what you reference them by. You can change that if you want. I'm going to leave it as energy. And now I've created it, I can start writing Python. I don't know like necessarily all these kind of structure and what's needed and what isn't needed, but fortunately we can do insert sample, SQL database, write one row of data to a table, and it's giving me the code, so that's cool. So I can get rid of this bit. So the example it's given me is it's creating an employee table and inserting some data. So I'm just going to change this. And the first thing I'm going to do is give my alias for my database. So that's the one I just created called energy. And I'm going to do add factor. And for those of you who've used Python before, you'll recognize these as kind of the parameters of your Python function. So I'm going to call this fuel, and it's going to be a string. So we're going to want to pass in the fuel and the CO2 amount. And just to make sure I keep my naming consistent, I'll go and grab the name from here. And so instead of this, we're going to say super that, and we'll make this a float. Cool. So we have our parameters set up for the function. We don't need documentation. And then we can start constructing our data that we're going to use in the query. So the queries that the example snippets will use query parameters, and I'll come back to that in a bit later. But essentially, you assign an object with the data you want to interact with, and then you can use them further down. I'm not going to be creating the table, it's already there, so I can just get rid of this bit. And yeah, so you're writing a SQL statement, so this is pretty familiar to a lot of people. I've forgotten my table name already, so let's go and get it. So we're going to insert into that table fuel and kilograms of CO2. And because we've set the data object up here, and that's being used in the query, we just need to make sure, like for every question mark, it'll reference one of these in order. So we only have two things we want to care about. So we're going to insert into the table, and don't need that one, fuel, kilograms of CO2, and the two values. And I can just change the return string because this does show up in a couple of places. And let's do something like this. So hopefully there's no syntax errors there. And I can publish the function. And there is a syntax error. Does anyone spot it? Here. Thank you. That's good. So the functions take a while to publish, particularly the first time. So while that's off doing its thing, I'll jump into Power BI and start building some of the interface. So here's my Power BI desktop. I've already imported the two tables. So we have all of our invoices and we have our empty table for the emissions. And I can just create the relationship. It should be one to many, many to one. Yep. Cool. And now we're going to want to kind of build the interface that allows people to insert the data. Now, there are a few preview bits in here. So if you go into your options and go into preview features, it's these guys here: button slicer visual, list slicer visual, text slicer visual. These are the ones you need to be able to interact with the user data functions. I have those enabled. So I'm just going to quickly build up a bit of an interface. So I'm just going to bring a table on and bring in the fuel. Good. And then I'll just create a quick measure that's maybe the number of invoices. Usage. So I can go on there and turn totals off. And I'm going to want to create a measure that knows which is the one of these that is selected. So I'm going to create a new measure now. Nope. New measure, fuel to add. And I'm going to do something like, so if there's only one thing selected, we'll take the max of it. Otherwise, it's going to be blank. So drag that in here. Fuel blank. Do card visual. Cool. So this is just confirming what option the user has selected. And I'm just going to change the formatting of this a little bit. Something like that. That's all. This can go away. Cool. So I'm going to put that up here. So the user doesn't have to type in what fuel they're adding. They can just click on this interface and it will select it for them. So far, so good. And then the other bit we're going to want is the way for the user to input the actual number. So this is where the new text slicer comes in. So in other uses, this is literally a text slicer. You can drag in any field you want from your model, start typing stuff in, and it'll filter it like that. But I'm going to use it here as a data input. So it helps if I give it a nice title. So we do kilogram, something like that. And I will also get rid of the arrowy thing. Where's that? Visual. I will do that. Cool. So that's the two main points of data import, and now we just need a method to kind of invoke the function. And you can do that through buttons. So I'm going to insert one of these, perhaps stick it like that there. And I imagine by now our function should be published. So we can go to here and we can say, yes, we want an action. We're going to do a data function. This is like one that just appears subtly in the background. You can go to your workspace, the function set, and then the function. And it's detected what the parameters are already. So against the fuel, I can tell it to pick up the measure. And against the kilograms of CO2, we want this text box. And because we've given it a title, it should be in the dropdown. And we can set it to clear after the user's done their input. And that is more or less it. Like, we can tidy this up a bit. And I think to make it more interesting, we'll create an actual measure that before. So we want to see tons of CO2e. And let's do something like add columns to that. Okay, so now we've got the table. We can just say it is the factor times by the amount. And because I've made this in tons, I'll just divide it by 1,000. Set it to 2 decimal places. And if I put this in a card now, it should be blank. And maybe I can do a pie chart with fuel in it as well. So nothing's there right now. That's what we'd expect. So we can click on diesel, that's showing up. And we can say it's going to be 2.45 kilograms per unit. In Power BI Desktop, you have to control click on this and it goes off and has a think. And then in a moment, it should refresh and the number should appear. And we have this saying it's added. It's pi. So that's pretty good. On this visual here, I just want to restrict it to the ones where we need to do the data entry. So I'm just going to add a filter in on this one to say where this is blank. So now this is only showing the ones where we need to do it. And just to make things a bit neater, I'm going to turn off some of these interactions. And yeah, and we can carry on going through all these different ones. So it's refreshing like this now. I'll publish it into the Power BI service shortly, and you'll see it behaves a bit differently there. And then let's do this. So you can see now I entered a really big number for that factor. And what I'd like to do now is just to build another function that allows the user to go in and kind of fix the error if it's wrong, or fix the factors. So I'm just going to jump back into the function set, and I'm going to create one that's almost the same, but where we do an update. So just change the function name. Oh, you do need these bits. And we can have the same parameters, but we're going to want to change the query. So this is now going to be update set from. Now these are query parameters, they are in a certain order. So I just need to swap these round because we're using the kilograms first. And yeah, and as a point of interest as well, when you're writing SQL like this, it reminds me of like SQL injection attacks and to watch out for that kind of thing. If you use query parameters like this, it's absolutely safe. This will sanitize it. But if you go off and try and do your own thing by perhaps trying to do something like this, you can absolutely do query injection attacks. I tried it and I managed to get it to drop the table by giving it the right command. So yeah, use your query parameters like this. And I can say updated. Cool. And I'll publish that. And if it doesn't error straight away, we're probably good. Cool. So back over in here, I'm just going to tidy this up slightly, making it a bit more of a user interface. So I can do insert, maybe a shape, set the background to be nothing, border, black, center back. Then I can kind of do this. group it all together. And now we have kind of a nice little box that we can place anywhere in our reports around other visuals, perhaps. And we can call this page add factors. And I'm just going to duplicate it and just tweak it a little bit to be update factors. So first thing I need to do is ungroup this. So at the moment, this is showing the ones where we need to enter data for. So I just need to swap it around a little bit and tell it to do the ones where we need data. Where we already have data that we want to change. And I can do something like this, so we can see the values, we can see how many invoices are attached to them. And this, in this case, we want the filtering to be the opposite. We want it to be where this is not blank. Cool. And we need a different measure because this is looking for the other columns. Well, I don't trust that. I did a different one in my practice. So we could say fuel to update, and I'm going to do a similar measure to what I did before. This is fuel. If that guy has one value, fuel. So I can put this in the measure here, in the card, confirm that's working. This can remain the same. You can't refer to slices on different pages. So when you're building up your Translytical task flows and setting your parameters, you can only refer to the slices on the same page. And one thing I did want to show you was the button slicer. So instead of building a table like this, where I'm kind of figuring out which one the user has selected, the new button slicer does something quite similar. So you can drag it on if I don't cross filter, and this is showing everything where we have data for. I want to do something in the layout section, do like that. And again, we can do not blank. So this would work in the same way this works. You can click on it, the measure's still picking up the right things. And it is a nicer user interface, but I quite like having the value there next to it as well. Like you can absolutely organize this a different way. And this card does support tooltips, so I can drag on some of the other metrics and what I want to see. Just do that, won't matter. And by default, the tooltips don't show. You have to go and turn them on under general. So this will be an alternative way as opposed to doing the table. I quite like my table, so that's fine. So I can put my box around this, group everything. Oh, before I do that, the action button, and you now need to set up for the other function. It's published in the background. It has the same parameters, so I just need to switch out the measure that's being used and tell it to use the slicer. So that should be ready to go. These buttons are kind of aware of the context of the function as well. So if I hover over this now, it says fuel is required. So it enforces kind of filling in the parameters. And now it'll tell me this is required. And it even knows the data types. So it's telling me that can't be converted, that's not going to work. So when we give it a real value, it becomes active. And you can change all the style of that. There's on hover, on press, on disabled, when it's actually doing the processing. So you can customize this quite a bit. And if I go and press this now, I didn't want to change diesel, but we'll let it go. I can go to LPG, where this is perhaps out by a factor of 100. Update that. That's all gone through. And now the charts and everything are updating instantly. I'm just going to now publish this to my workspace. I just want to make sure I give it the same name. I have problems with my data connections, so if I overwrite the one that's there, then it should be okay. So that's now published. I'll give the model a refresh. Should be pretty instant. And then I can go to my reports. So this is my, as we saw in Power BI Desktop, we have a couple of fields we need to put the factors in for. So I can do want to do that. And there's no control clicking anymore. It's just click. This spins for a bit. You don't get the big pop-up. It says the request is submitted. You can click this to get the return string from your function and to see the function name, but it's a bit less intrusive than it is on Power BI Desktop. And the validation works exactly the same as well. So now we have all the data entered. We can, if we want to, go to the update factors page and go and change any of these. That's working nicely. I just wanted to show you a couple of things in the functions. So if I go back to my function set, these exist not only for Power BI, you can do a lot of different things with them and you can call them from different places. So we can go into the home page and we can generate some code that invokes this. So here's some code, some Python code. You'll have to sort out your own authentication bearer token stuff, but all the functions have a URL. So you can call that theoretically from anywhere. And you provide the parameters it wants in the body and you run it. And this actually gives more error information when things fail. So if there's something wrong with your function, Power BI will just say no, like it's broke. And then to debug it, I ran this code and it gave me a better error message. And it also gives you the code to run it from a notebook directly. So there's a special notebook utility to do it. You give it the function name, sorry, the function set, and then whatever these IDs are. And then it will go and run the function from your notebook. So the one last thing I did want to mention was my capacity metrics. I have noticed that these are a little heavy. So you can see I'm been practicing this on the F2 capacity, and you can see I practiced it this morning at whenever this was. It's not letting me do that. About midday, and then again around 3 o'clock. Oh, sorry, that was this morning, and then here. But it is causing some quite big spikes. Apparently, it's down to the SQL database, but I guess it's just something to be aware of. It was announced at FabCon this week that Git integration is supported now for everything, so presumably these function sets will be in there as well, so they can all be integrated into Git and CI/CD through your different environments. But yeah, that was everything I had to show you guys. Do you have any questions? Oh yeah, I meant to tell you that. Yeah, so the SQL database is obviously preview. I thought user data functions were, but then today when I went to it, it didn't have the thing next to it, so they're presumably in GA. The slicers here in Power BI, these are all preview, but they're Power BI preview, which isn't the same in some organizations. You can get away with using that. Yeah, it may do, yeah. But the user functions are, yeah, because they're not preview, therefore they should be in the Git integration. Oh, you mean running the code outside of Power BI? Yeah, it did give a bit more information, and you can build. I did start trying to do like a try catch and pushing a bit better error message back, but then I got busy doing real work, so I went and did that. Mm. I don't know of any plans. Yeah, and there isn't an interface where you can have it on like a row of data and press the button at the end. Okay. Yeah, and I would never suggest you go off and try and build an application with this and get too involved. It's not really what it's made for. But like for little bits of metadata management, like in this example, I think it's a good use case for it. Sure. So as far as I'm aware, if you can use the report, you'll be able to use the function just to help the flow of the talk, really. But yeah, yeah, and of course, inside the function, you can start doing quite complicated logic, and you don't have to do simply one thing. You can go off and write lots of data into lots of places. Again, whether you should do that, I don't know. But like at the end of the day, it's Python. You've got a connection to a database. You could do an awful lot now, couldn't you? Just on the click of a button. Uh, which is why I had the spike at 7:30 this morning, but not at 3 o'clock. Yeah. But then even so on the F2 capacity, like in normal operation, like this section here, it was getting pretty near 100%. Me just clicking around on some buttons, inserting, updating data. So yeah, just like testing and be mindful of it. Yeah, so yeah, you could absolutely have kind of username in here. Yeah, like I could see that would work, Johnny. Yeah, because you can pass Power BI knows the principle. You can pass it through into the function. Whether you should be doing it like that, like, is a different question. But yeah, you would have to maintain some kind of security, therefore, in the database, wouldn't you? Like it's a SQL database and it's ACID compliant. So if they're all hammering on the different things, it will it it should manage it. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that URL. Yeah. Like it depends what you mean by breaking it. Like yes, it would certainly break if I hadn't added the filter to this page and allowed you to do duplicate field types. So some of that would be down to how you build up the user interface to prevent that kind of stuff happening. But then you may want more validation in the function to make sure the thing it's doing is valid. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I'm not aware if the one-link security propagates through into SQL database. Is that? Yeah, and yeah, that is obviously something you could code into the table. You could put a timestamp on there and build that kind of logic into the function. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, do you mean the Power BI lineage like this? No. So yeah, it doesn't tell you that this function is embedded into this report, does it? Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah. Cheers, everyone. I think we're gonna have a break over, Johnny.